Thank you for joining us for an informative panel discussion today. My name is Reena, and I'm here to represent the India Education Forum. The India Education Forum is an advocacy organization concerned with the challenges and possibilities in India's higher education sector. The forum's main goal is to contribute to the development of future institutions in India that would provide world-class education. Joining us today at the panel are some of the renowned industry leaders. Professor Ujwala Chakradeo, Vice-Chancellor with SNDT Women's University. Professor Atul Khosla, Vice-Chancellor, Shoolini University. Mr. Gautam Saraf, Vice President, Chief Human Resource Officer, Ferns and Petals. This interesting session will be moderated by Ms.Neeti Sharma, co-founder and president, TeamLease Edtech. Welcome once again, all of you.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. We've always been discussing about the gap between industry and academia, and always keep hearing that industry says they don't have relevant talent to hire from, and academia saying that industry does not invest enough to make people employable. We've also seen in the last 2 years the world of work changing, as well as the workplace skill requirements are changing. We are seeing that technology, machines, robots are replacing many jobs, but at the same time, newer jobs are being created every single day. There is data which proves that about 70% of students who are in class 1 and 2 will join jobs in the next 10 to 15 years that don't even exist today. So we really don't know what is the kind of job roles or skill sets required. But there is a rapid change, especially in the last 18 to 24 months. Employees are continuously now making huge investments in upskilling and reskilling their workforce, no matter whether they are at entry level or laterals or at leadership levels, just so that they remain relevant and continue to be in demand. Industry needs employees that match their skill sets, are agile and adapt to change quickly. Apprenticeships lies at the intersection of education and employment and has enormous potential in terms of creating earning and learning potentials and opportunities for the vast majority of Indian youth. And the time has finally come for us to reach out to them and give them the opportunity that they can avail and become more employable and productive for the Indian labor force. According to a recent survey, apprenticeships have advanced in Europe, the United States, and Australia. However, in India, we are still probably just 1.5% of the total labor workforce that actually continues to be deployed across industries. It is very important to understand the benefits that companies may actually reap if they begin and build their apprenticeship programs, which, like I said, are at an intersection.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, audience. I'm sorry for intruding myself. As you know, my name is Khosla. I am founder and vice-chancellor of Shoolini University. I've spent 25 years of my life talking about education, the future of education. A quick introduction to me. I started my career with McKinsey & Company. I've been a consultant all my life. I've seen the two sides of the same coin, which is what industry wants, as having spent 20 years in consulting and last 10 years of my life in education. So, I'm going to sort of jump into this discussion with you, Gautam, because we would like to hear what the industry seeks. Now, I've got some very strong views about it, but I'm going to give my views later. So, Gautam, why does it happen? You come to me and you come to Ujwala, we'll tell you that our students are not getting placed and you are not getting people. So what really do you seek, from students as you think about it? Sorry, Nidhi, we hijacked the whole.
my apologies. I did not even realize that I had dropped off. I was telling Reena, I'm actually at our skills university, and I think the network, which is in Baroda, the network is a little iffy.
Problem, I'm sorry, I intervened. So we'll come to you later. I'm not the moderator. So,
please continue. Please continue. Yes.
Gautam, you give us a 2-minute snapshot. What skills are you looking for, and why do you think educational institutions are not able to meet those needs? I think Neeti gave us a very, very good background of what the status in the current scenario is. But really, what are those specific skills you're looking for?
Hi, Professor Dr. Ujwala, and hi, Dr. Professor Atul. So first of all, see, I don't see there is a one. What we definitely see is that the aspiration of today's students have also changed. Okay, today there has been a very different skill set, which is, it's not that there is a very different skill set, but today what organization, the way that they are growing, okay, they're growing so fast, they need absolutely ready talent who can be really work from the day one, okay, who can deliver result and give the output on day one. And that definitely is not going to happen, because I personally feel that as an organization, even if I take any one new person into the job, especially when the students are actually entering into the job for the first time, you've actually have to orient them how the entire corporate organization works. Okay, what is the overall business? Okay, I'll give you my complete scenario. So I recently joined from the Ferns and Petals. I'm coming from the FMCG and the retail background, and it's an hospitality, gifting, and the e-commerce business. For me, it's gonna take me actually even I've spent around 16 years or 18 years of experience in the HR, and probably have done each and every role by myself. Okay, I still feel that I have to go a long way. Okay, in terms of understand the business. Okay, and decode what exactly are the key success factors, or probably enable what are the things which we need to factor here to drive from an HR agenda. Okay. Therefore, I think there's a false expectation, I would say, from institutes or from the students at times, that any student who comes on board should be able to deliver on the day one. I think all of us today, and I being myself, okay, we have to be really empathize with all our students, okay, and create a strong platform of learning and the orientation for all the students, okay, which can really help them, okay. And I personally feel that the more cross learning which can happen during the curriculum, that can bridge this gap. Okay, so when I say that, I am only exposed to the curriculum which has been studied during my college, but when I do, if I can do also cross learning when it's on the industrial trainings or those camp, when they come for into the corporates for 2 months or 3 months training. Okay, if we can actually integrate those programs really well, and if we allow them to get exposed in specific skill set, okay, where organizations also see a merit and also students see a huge merit in terms of in upskilling in their learnings, that will also help us. So for us, I think it depends. It depends on the entire organization.
So I'm going to, before I hand it over to Neeti, because she is really the official moderator, and before I hand it over to Neeti, I've got one observation and point to make and one question to you. Then I hand it over to you, Neeti, so excuse me. So the question is, I used to do a lot of recruiting for McKinsey for Olev Wyman, and we would go to ISB and I'm Ahmedabad. I probably hired more than 1,000 years. And the only criteria we would have was a very simple question. We would say, is this person mature enough to walk the corridors of the client? So we were not even expecting any skill set. We just said, is he or she decent enough to figure out his or her way across the organization and not be embarrassed by the situation. So that's the point on too much expectation expected from fresh hires. But the question I'm going to ask you is, if there are 3 skill sets to look for, so when you're hiring new talent, you go to a campus and you're hiring someone, what are those 3 things you look for? What are the very specific 3 skill sets?
Okay. I could be more personal driven over here when I answer here. For me, one is what's his attitude, how go-getter he is. That's one for me. Okay. Second, how passionate in terms of achieving and learn new things. Okay, and primarily achieving new skills or acquiring new skills. Third, how much he believes in the growth story of India or whichever organization he is into. Okay, so with the current age and all set of students, in all due respect, I think patience is the word is the key, right? I personally feel that just because of the information is so readily available, they also get distracted too quickly. Okay, but however, in the kind of learning orientation and the smart they are versus us, I think the more focused they are, the kind of attitude, these are two things which probably I would say, not even three, I would say.
So I'll just jump in.
I'm going to come to you in a second. I'm sorry. You've hit the nail on the head, and I'm going to build on this, but I'm going to hand it over now to Neeti, who's, like I said, the official moderator. Over to you, Neeti.
Thanks, Atul. So, okay, I'm actually building on to what Gautam you said, and I want to bring in Dr. Ujwala here, because typically we always keep saying that the role of an education institute is to prepare students for the rigor and responsibilities of their lives and their future professions. Are education institutes really focusing on making students employable and job ready? Dr. Ujwala, if you could comment on this.
Yes, of course. And I would bluntly say, no, we are not. That is for sure. Because there is a wide gap, as you rightly started when in your introduction. The gap between the education and the industry where they need to be absorbed is tremendous, tremendous. I remember where as soon as the dialogue and the discussion started, and when you started introducing, I remembered my old days when I had read Elvin Tofflin's, Elvin Tofflin, maybe, The Future Shock, long ago, of course. And he said that the things are in education, we keep on giving things which are not necessary, or student is not ready to absorb them. So only 10% of the time the child spends on the things which he or she really likes to learn. And rest of the 90%, he is just sitting there and wasting the time. The education should come in small packages is the first thing that I had learned at that time. And the society is changing very, very fast. He said so at that time, which I didn't realize at that time. But now is the time, the things which he mentioned in 1970 and he envisaged in 2000 it would happen are actually happening right now with our society. And the things are changing, really changing very fast now. And we are still giving the education which is 20 years old. We are not ready to take up the challenges of the new world, new things, and we are not even ready to shed away those things which are not necessarily to be given to the student. They are basic things which are most important, as rightly said by Mr. Gautam, that we need to teach them few things which would make them readily available for the society, to serve the society. I'll just mention one of the example that skill development courses were introduced by the government. And there were three months courses which were being taken up by the students. It was utter failure later on because of only one simple thing, that when we talk about skill development, it's not, the skill is not only related to what you do with your hands. It has got to do something with which is there in your head as well. And for a human being to be a perfect human being is also a part of the education. Only small minor corrections in those courses would have made them successful, that along with the skills, 1 or 2 lectures of what do they envisage as, how much do they love their country, what are their moral or the ethics or the basic internal personalized things which need development. If these things could have been added and clubbed with the actual real skill development where they are going to earn money. So earning money is basically definitely required, but while delivering the skill, you have to perform in a at a different stage, as very rightly said by Professor Atul when he was talking about whether that person has got the confidence to walk around the corridors, to meet the people, take the challenges, and think about the future also. He would not be there at the level of only delivering the skills. There has to be a future for himself. There has to be a future for the organization where he is delivering things. Only then a person who is at a lower level can probably rise up to the highest level. So that vision, where will it come from? It has to come from education. And these small courses, small packages will have to be clubbed with it. There's a long thing or many more points which I would like to discuss, but of course the forum is all yours and you can, I can come back again.
But I think what you're saying touches a chord. I think all of us have gone through the same education system, learned the hard way, rather than just learning, starting at the education institute and then learning on the job. And I'll just bring in Professor Atul here and ask, what Dr. Ujwala said is absolutely true, probably for all education institutes. But what is stopping us from actually bringing this to the forefront? Why are we not able to integrate skills and knowledge under one umbrella, under a program that we are offering to our students at the graduate or postgraduate level?
So, Neeti, first of all, thank you for this. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Okay, but I'm not visible. Okay, now I'm visible. So I have some very, very strong views about this. So there are some big educationists. Ujwala ma'am is there, and all of you come from the corporate sector. You are deep HR people. So excuse me if I make some strong statements. I think the first point I'd like to make over here is we have to ask ourselves, as a nation, what do we want to be? Do we want to be a nation of passengers, of followers, or do we want to be a nation of innovators? Our education system today creates passengers or creates followers. We love rote. With all due respect to the Infosys and the TCS and the Cognizants of the world, these are not jobs which are, they're not creating jobs like what Steve Jobs or Elon Musk does. You go to any stand-up comedy, and 20% of that comedy is actually making fun of techies, as we call them. The point I wanted to make over here is that I believe somewhere we've got this whole narrative wrong about skills, and I'm going to build my case in a second. I went to IIT Kanpur, and I studied aerospace engineering there. And if you ask me how much of engineering I know, I'll say this much. And you can interpret that whichever way. I'll leave that to your interpretation. Having said that, I am very successful in my profession, earlier as a consultant and now as an entrepreneur, as a social entrepreneur. What made me successful? And what makes IITians successful? I personally believe it's a different set of skill sets, which Gautam sort of hinged on. And the future of the world is going to be about those skill sets, because what I call plumbing skills or technical skills are changing very, very rapidly every 3 years, every 1 year, or whatever. And there's too much emphasis on making students learn Python or whatever those technical skills are. So what are they going to be? I break them down into, and I'm going to repeat what you said a little bit, Gautam. I call them me skills and we skills. So what are me skills? Me skills are those skills which I built for myself, and those skills are communication skills. I'll give a small example. When I went to IIT Kanpur, I couldn't speak a word of English. I'm not joking. As it happened, my roommate was from Chennai and I was from Himachal. So we couldn't speak Hindi. I couldn't speak Tamil. So we ended up learning how to speak English. I then joined McKinsey and I got some of the social skills, communication skills, very important. Problem-solving skills. How do you pick up any problem of the world, whether it is about Ferns and Petals, or it's about sales, or it's about TeamLease, or it's about whatever it is in the world, the ability to solve that problem is problem-solving skills. That skills is a me skill. We can also call it critical reasoning skills. Ability to learn. Everything is there on the net. When COVID happened, for example, I wanted to be a chef, and I decided one day to be a chef, and I went out and baked a cake, and I can tell you my cake was better than any cake baked in Solon, because I had the ability to go to YouTube, identify the right YouTube video, and then learn from that and bake the cake. But more importantly, the ability to unlearn, because all the skills that you pick up today will be not relevant 3 years down the line. Today you're doing Python, tomorrow who knows what software is going to be there. We live in a discontinuous world. So those are we skills. Then there are we skills, which Gautam spoke about. We skills are ability to collaborate, most critical. So for my audience over here, I'm going to talk about the iPhone. So Neeti, what is this? What do you think this machine is? Is it a computer? Is it a mobile phone? Is it a camera? Is it a music device? Is it a great piece of design? Or it is just a place where you had an amazing retail experience when you bought it from? I think it's all together. It's also got great metallurgy in there. It's got great material science in there in terms of, the glass and the metals put in there. There are 40,000 engineers who together work together to put this iPhone together. But go to our students. They can't work with their next door friend. They will say, oh, I only want to work with my friend. I don't want to work with someone else, because they don't have the ability to collaborate. So collaboration skills are we skills. Ability to lead teams is a we skill. I think these are the type of skills that we need to start pushing our students towards. And how can we do that? We can do that by making our students experience real life problems. I'll give a small example over here. If any of you is doing economics, you would have heard of a concept called GDP. So I did a small experiment. I sent my students to my town and said, go to Solon town and tell me and find out the GDP of Solon. And I broke the team into 10 different teams. So they went out and they came back and presented. So first of all, they learned collaboration. They learned how to work 10 people together, how to divide the task. They had no idea how to find out GDP. They problem solved to figure out what is GDP, how to figure out GDP, and then they presented it back. And these are the type of real life problems we need to start giving to our students, where they actually do small bites of problem solving. And I think that's what
Atul, sorry for interrupting you, Professor Atul. What stops us from including that in our education system right now?
Our mind, because we are boxed and we believe कि ऐसा ही होता है. You talk to an educationist, he will say, "Sir, ये क्या बात कर रहे हो आप? ऐसे तो नहीं teaching होती." Right? I'm sorry, I'm speaking in Hindi. Because we are boxed. And I'm going to give a small example over here. I'm a very ambitious person, Neeti. And I went to Oxford and I asked the provost of Oxford, what makes Oxford Oxford? He proudly looked at me and said, son, 1,000 years.
Yeah.
And I'm a bit of a cheeky man. So I asked him, I said, but I only got 10. He looked at me and said, you must be smoking dope, my son. I said, I'm not. If Facebook and Google could change the world of technology in 5 years or 7 years, why do you believe Shoolini will not change it in 10 years and beat the shit out of Oxford? So we have to think like Facebook and Google.
Yeah.
If we think like Oxford and we think like IIT Kanpur, then we'll only create a second-class replica of that. So my pitch to all of us who are now into education and you're into edutech is to start breaking holy cows. Is to asking ourselves, why is our learning not up to the mark? And we have to start and experiment new and new things, Neeti. I think I really loved what Ujwala ma'am said. Start giving knowledge in small bites.
Yep.
Start using technology. Start using new forms of curriculum. Start having a different type of faculty delivering. Working on apprenticeships, like you spoke about. I think all those type of different things we have to experiment with. And India will become a better place. The last thing I'm going to talk about, half a second more, is gig skills.
Yeah.
The future is going to be about gig skills. But are we really teaching our students about gig skills? All my students are complaining, oh, we are doing online, offline is better. And I'm telling them, guys, you're so lucky. You know, Google, if you're working in Google, you're not going to be working in their office. You're learning the skills of working online. Then why do you want to come to the classroom? But everyone wants to come to the classroom.
Yeah.
It's a question for you. Anyway, I'm going to pose it.
Thanks.
We'll come back. And like I said, I've got some strong thoughts. Industry is not collaborating with education. It is a big mafia of all of you. That
I'll actually come back to you because I think today's conversation will probably give us a solution about this collaboration.
Let's do that.
Yeah. So Gautam, you know, I heard you mention about the kind of basic skill set that you need people at an entry level, but the industry you are in has such large volumes of distributed field workforce, right? How do you ensure that all of them are ready for the job? I'm sure you're not getting productive people day one. You are making a lot of investments in skilling them and upskilling them and hand-holding them and making them employable so that they get productive maybe month 2 or month 3. So how do you manage this large distributed workforce, and what do you think the institutes, the education institutes could actually do to help get you to a better starting position than what we are in right now?
Interesting question, I think, but I'll try to answer as effective as possible here. So a couple of things I think, Niti, for us is definitely we see a technology is playing a very interesting role in terms of providing solution to this problem. Okay, and I'll give you a very simple example. Okay, 10 years back in a corporate, okay, anytime we used to identify what are the development area, what are the opportunity which we need to work in terms of developing our talent. Okay, we used to do a very basic TNI, okay, training need analysis, and then we find that 80% of the lot who needs to work upon, let's say that communication skills or basic supervision skills. Okay, we used to make it a generic program and we used to do it run across the organization and stating to our leaders that we have able to answer all the major training need which was there in the organization, able to resolve. However, that was not resolving an address for a lot many other people who were actually need was not there. Okay, or their need was not the communication skills or the basic supervision skills. Okay, with the technology, what is happening is that we are able to direct certain modules or certain learning programs what their need is on an individual basis. Okay, so for us, answering to your question, how are we catering? So today, any person who comes into the organization today, so there are many technology platforms which is available to with us, where based on their need in terms of which will make them better in terms of their skill, in terms of knowledge, okay, they pick and choose those learning modules, and so that they can perform better on ground. Okay, so overall the objective here is that how can they be able to perform well on the ground. Okay, so whatever is the tool which they require, it is available with the technology. They just have to pick like YouTube, they just pick those modules with them, it gets assigned, they have to get certified. Wherever they get stuck, they can again use this technology platform to refer and as a knowledge base. They don't have to wait for the supervisor or a manager or a coach to correct them or mentor them or guide them. They can, these are virtual help which are available to them, there are guides which are available to them. They just look at them, those become more confident. Okay, and there are technology in terms of learning. For an example, the questionnaires are built in such a way where their memory or their learnings becomes more even better. Okay, so they can remember those for a longer period. We ensure that those being practiced by them, and then again they respond to those questions in that. So there are mobile-based learning programs, modules which we are running for all of them, especially at the entry level, which really is being more very effective. Okay. Also today, when we ask any of them what is, we also see there is a huge desperation in all of them, where they want to upskill themselves. Okay. So for example, in my tech team, someone is working on React, Java, and someone is senior software engineer. He wants to learn something else. Rather than he depending more on the organizations, we have given them Udemy, right? And we say that you please pick and choose your module or probably courses which you would like to learn. And we've seen a huge interest. Okay, and basis on what their aspiration is, basis on what their interest is, and where they would like to move their career or what kind of skill set they would like to learn. And I think that's the biggest shift. I think rather than they more dependent on the organization L&D department, okay, they've become more independent here, picking up their own skill set where they felt more engaged, they feel more meaningful. They may not have to get into all those unproductive learning training programs, okay, which they feel they are not contributing or neither they are gaining out of it. I think it's more a smart way of learning which has started. Yeah, I think for me that's the shift which is happening. I think, and today kids are as rightly said by Professor Atul, that he was able to pick the right YouTube channel to learn the bakery, right? Similarly, the kids are also smart enough that where is the right kind of content available today, which I can help me to sharpen myself, okay, or probably build that skill for myself. And that's the shift which is happening today. And I think the more we provide those set of tools to the kids today, or probably to the students who are more aspiring than all of us, okay, who have more visibility and who are more confident about the future and about their own future, I think this will only help them to grow them even better, or become more sharper on skills which they require to excel.
Thanks, Gautam. And I think you raise a very important point about probably empowering employees to take their own learning roadmap rather than companies, defining it and then pushing them to learn and, upskill themselves continuously. But I'll come back to Dr. Ujwala, because the last 2 years have flipped our classrooms completely. We had no option but to adopt technology, go digital. We started with the Zoom meetings, and then we went on to various tech platforms, and the adoption increased. Some places the adoption went down, but we also have a lot of data point that proves that there was a massive learning loss among students in the last few years, in the last few semesters that they've attended virtually through us, right? So in your opinion, because the future of learning is going to change, I mean, we are not probably getting everybody 100% back to classrooms anytime soon. What would be the future of education, and what in your view is the right combination of education for students now?
Yes, this is a very important thing which we need to, of course, discuss because of the recent experience of COVID time. And then we all, as we are meeting each other even today virtually. And this has been made possible because of what we have experimented in last 2 years. And we have been talking about initially when on 20th of March 2020, the lockdown was declared. And at that time, we were at loss. We didn't know how to go about it. Many of our teachers also didn't know. We experimented, worked on it, and we realized that yes, it's possible. But I slightly disagree with Mr. Atul when he says that online thing is the best thing that has happened. It's always a blended thing that I would say would be possible, would be necessary, because there are many things which have been made possible because of this online facility. We are able to reach the world at the far end of the globe, and people from there can share their expertise. At one point of time, this is a fact. But at the same time, the urge of a human being to learn without words, by meeting people, but just by being in a particular ambience, the child learns something. Being an architect, I understand. I'm an architect by education and by profession also. So being an architect, I understand that the ambience makes a lots of difference in the learning. It's not always the word or the lecture or the other things. It's a persona of a teacher also makes a difference. The way teacher walks and what she believes in, it's just like what mother believes in and parents do at home. It's exactly the same way what happens in the schools. So and also they learn from their peers. The fighting and the snatching each other's things is also a way of learning, protecting themselves. All this has been missed out in these past 2 years. There is a generation of children who have not seen the schools at all. My own grandchildren, when I asked them, did you go to the school? They said, we go to laptops. And that's what their answer was. And that's very surprising, very unfortunate. And we don't know what kind of a vision they have about the education schools in their mind, and what are they going to build up. Anyway, but that's the situation. And there's no U-turn to only schools. Now the spaces in the schools are bound to shrink. There'll be less spaces required, and there'll be also, we can't go away and do away with the online things. We have to take up these online things now. And best of the two would be the blended education, which has been very much talked about. And the technology will surely help us out. Here, before I give this mic back to you, Neeti, I would also like to talk about the possibility which has now been made available to us is through the national education policy. Without talking or mentioning national education policy, which I have which I've tried to understand and tried to implement at our university also. I can't stop talking about it because digitization, technology is one compartment which has been worked on, which has been mentioned in the National Education Policy. The policy has tried to make so many things possible. One more example, which I would say, it talks also about the skill development. And in the skill development, the India, in near future of India, we see the youth are now going to be at work, and only certain percent of the Indian youth is being professionally trained to take up the courses. This is just in contrast with what happens in America and Korea and also in Canada. In Korea, I have learned that it is more than 98% of the available youth, which they consider as the age group of 19 to 25, and they are being taught professionally in the educational institutes about how to join the profession industry. Whereas in India, we have not just neglected this particular sector. That has been understood and being taken care by the National Education Policy. So when we talk about this particular change, only one aspect of National Education Policy, then we need to think about these industries which Mr. Gautam is talking about to come to the universities and establish their centers at the universities, or probably vice versa, where universities can go to these centers, sign MOUs with each other. MOU is just a modality. However, one section of their industry can be reserved for our university students to be there and take a choice as they want to. I'm sure all 100% of the students would like to be the part of that entire thing. They will look at it, learn it, and then leave away. But what kind of a arrangement, as maybe as a social responsibility also, these industries can come forward and make these facilities available. So this is not only the judicious blend of the online and offline, but it is a judicious blend of on campus, off campus, or in industry. This is what I think is the future of education in India. And only then it will make it possible to have the ambitions and the common goals of developing India furthered.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Ujwala. I think you've raised very, very important points. Some of the things that I really take away is, the whole difference between building universities and university buildings. In India, we confuse universities with infrastructure and land that we have, but not exactly the kind of classrooms we're bringing to the table. Also, the new education policy mandates not just digital learning, but also, we term it as degree apprenticeships. Even the last budget spoke about degree apprenticeships and are now asking universities to adopt that as a form of learning. Like you said, Dr. Ujwala, either the industry comes to the campus or the campus actually goes to the industry. So why can't we have classrooms at industries? And I'm aware, Gautam, that Ferns and Petals and many other organizations, I think about 750 organizations actually that work with us, deploy apprentices who are continuously undergoing degree programs in parallel. So before I come to you, Gautam, and I want you to share your experience on degree apprenticeships, I would actually, ask Professor Atul to put his points, because NEP is mandating, digital learning and degree apprenticeships. NEP is also mandating inclusion of skills along with the education programs that we are offering. So Professor Atul, A, your views, B, how do you think you could implement that at your university?
I think we will break the problem down into two things. The first is, as we call them, employability skills, skills which are needed to succeed or do your job. As Gautam mentioned, I think a lot of that can be delivered through technology, and you can create learning paths around that. So, for example, we work with Khosla, you work with Udemy, Gautam. So one of the things that we're doing is we're trying to map skills needed for different roles and then identify the competencies needed and use assessments for individual students, and then create individual learning paths for each of the students to say, okay, if you want to be a data analyst with Facebook, or you want to be a sales manager, sales is a little different, but let's say technology or technical driven skills which are needed. So you can do those. I think the fundamental question which I'd like to talk about, which NAP also speaks about, is how do you bring innovation? How do you bring leadership into our students? And I'm so glad Professor Ujwala brought the concept of professionalization. So we all need to realize that most of our parents were either working in the government, you were middle class or low middle class, or we were working in industries which are not that professional. So students, for example, who come to Shoolini don't have a concept of punctuality. They don't understand that 9 o'clock means 8:59, and it doesn't mean that you can walk in at 10 o'clock. They don't understand the concept of quality. They don't understand that quality means it needs to be 110% right. You can't leave a thing at 80% and then walk away. They don't understand the concept of commitment. That commitment means if you're saying I will deliver something at 9 a.m. on Monday, it cannot be saying I'm sorry, I fell sick or whatever. It has to be 9 a.m. They don't understand the concept of grooming. So how do you sort of bring those skills? So the point I wanted to make over here is that one is technical skills. And those technical skills is what technology will bring in. Then there's a whole concept of what I introduced as these skills and these skills. And for that, I completely agree with Ujwala, ma'am. You need to learn in and outside the classroom. You cannot do that sitting in an isolated medium. It has to be interactive. It has to be working with your peers in building those skills. And these professional skills are really, if there's one area, that's why I asked this question to Gautam, what are the 3 things you seek when you're hiring people? And he did not talk about any technical skill. And let me tell you, Neeti, I asked this question to all my friends, and no one ever speaks about technical skills. Everyone speaks about attitude, passion, communication skills. How do you understand? Do you understand the organization or not? The passion for that, etc. But these are the skills we don't give to students because we just make them go through those 500 different courses that they have to study. When do we talk about all these different things that Gautam spoke about? I'll give one last example over here before I hand it back to you. I used to sit on the board of a large automotive company, and I asked this question to my CEO that why don't you hire engineers? Why are you hiring diploma engineers? And he made a very interesting question, and he made a very interesting remark. He said, look, I want band managers. I don't seek people with deep technical ability because that's pretty much sorted out. And when I map that statement to, let's say, my mechanical engineering program, I am teaching my students some extreme detailed mathematics, designing. So there's a complete mismatch between what the industry is asking for, what Gautam is asking for, and the type of skills that the teachers are giving. So when I called my professor and said, why don't you rethink, why don't you bring in 3-4 management programs into your degree? He was so adamant. He said, no, sir, then how can we give a mechanical engineering degree, etc. So new education policy will become very, very important because good news is it's breaking these holy cows. We are being pushed to the new thinking, we're pushed to a new frontier. I think people like me and Ujwala ma'am can use the new education policy as a tool to now train our own faculty members to think differently. But think how beautiful it is that a student can now spend an year at Shoolini, an year at SNDT, probably a year at TeamLease University, and a year in the US. And
maybe even a year at Ferns and Petals, right?
Year in Ferns and Petals, right? Probably that's not allowed right now.
No, it is. It is actually because that's the construct of degree apprenticeships, Professor Atul.
Months is what they nowadays now.
Minimum. They have a minimum criteria, but you could go. I think about 30% or 25% is the minimum duration that they've defined in NEP.
Absolutely. Imagine you're now spending a year with Gautam, and 40 and delivery through MOOCs, right? You can 40% of the delivery can happen through MOOCs.
Yeah.
I think these are fundamental changes that are going to happen in our education. Some of us are going to implement them sooner than the others, but I think the world is very smart, Neeti. So ultimately, it's all about getting our students employable, getting them good jobs. And if the ones who innovated and the ones who are able to implement the new education policy, if we succeed, then the others will follow, because ultimately it's all about market sense. The last thought I want to talk 1 second is about inspiration, because I think Ujwala ma'am spoke about it. I strongly believe that higher ed institutions are in the business of inspiration. One spark can change a student. One inspiring thought can change a student. I'm going to encourage, if there are educators sitting over here, bring inspiring people to speak to your students. Build gardens out there. Build inspiring buildings. Man spoke about architecture. There's a reason for that. You want your students to start thinking about the unthinkable. So start thinking about things that your students normally cannot do. And it's going to change the way India works. Let's get the belly of India becoming Steve Jobs and Elon Musk, and India will be the richest country of the world.
Yeah, absolutely right. So Gautam, could you share your experience of appointing apprentice trainees as part of your teams, and how do you think it's going, and how do you think educationists, we have Professor Ujwala and Professor Atul here, and how do you think we could align with them and increase the number of degree apprenticeships that we have in our country?
I think I see it's a great way of engaging the young people into the industry today. Okay, honestly, I completely agree with what Professor Atul and what Professor Ujwala mentioned about that. How can we upright, or probably how can we make sure that our curriculum, or probably college or institutions, are inspiring enough and make kids ready, or probably students ready for the organization. And if I have to really look around, and today, if I have to really look at the job market, and Neeti, I'll just take a minute before I'll respond to that question. Yeah, honestly, are we not hiring? We are absolutely in full swing. Okay, not my industry or not my organization, every organization. Okay, is it that we do not want to hire is it that we do not want to hire students from the college? No, absolutely. The only thing which I mentioned, that if they would be ready in terms of solving my problem from the first day, or if they would have those skill set, okay, from the day one, where I know that the moment I get them, even after 15 days, they will start helping me in running my operations or business. Okay, I would have taken that punt. Okay, and I think that is where the gap is. For me, apprentice is helping me on that. Okay, apprentice is actually getting me those students from the one specific sector or specific colleges, one where the students themselves are keen to work with us, okay, learn about. So for an example, I'm talking to one of your team member where we want to ramp up our supply chain overall as a system, as a process, where we need also people who come from a good pedigree, at the same time who can help us in terms of setting up the entire supply chain. Okay, so one who can also do cross-train our existing staff, and at the same time we can get certain set of people who can help us and speed up the entire operation. So I see that there is a great amalgamation of both of the set of people, where we can get from students from the industry and the colleges respective, and we are able to give them exposure on certain things and probably help them learning those things on the ground. So I have also very strongly feel that one is the curriculum which has been taught through your lectures and all, and second is your OJT, which is on-job training, or through practicals, right? We all know that the kind of adaptation or in terms of learning what we have, when we actually yourself do, or when you see or you yourself perform that task, right? I think that OJT, or that cross-pollination of learning and doing it in the industry itself, okay, that gives you huge learning piece. And I think more than that, by the time the kids actually pass out, they are more confident, they have a great exposure, they know what kind of environment, how you have to tackle around people. Okay, so there is not any more goosebumps when you actually getting into the first time into the job, right? So it's you are actually swimming, you're learning swimming with the life jacket, I would say that. Yeah, and I think it's a very interesting combination. I think the more we explore, I still feel that it is still only explored at a very entry level jobs or roles. I personally feel that this can be done across levels. So if Professor Atul is actually teaching business analytics in his college, okay, I need 10 people who needs business analytics in my team. Okay, I'm actually on the verge of building this team. Okay, what happens if he says that Gautam, you are building this team? I'm happy to share. There are 3 students who would like to learn, and maybe if that can be a help in any form of taking over the load or taking away the load, okay, from your existing team, I'm happy to give up, and I'm happy to give 3 students who can participate in this, okay, expansion. Similarly, I have designer, I have such a big content team who's actually like 120 people content team, right? When we are working every time on design, packaging, innovations, there's so much work happening. If there are students from those who comes from that interest and would like to be part of that, that project, I would be happy to include, because we also know the kind of thought process, the kind of inputs, what they bring in versus which people who are already 10 years, 12 years of, okay, and the kind of technology age, the kind of adoption of social medias which they are more proer than us, okay, and I would definitely need their inputs. I need them, but only thing is how much ready, how much excited, do they see value addition to themselves, okay, or they only join us because it's a part of a curriculum, or is it part of an assignment which they have to accomplish to get a grade. Okay, I think the more we make it more meaningful, okay, in every way, okay, for the organization or for the students, I think the more commitment will come in, the more passion or the attitude will also become right, for me, I think, and which is also a major part of the selection criteria for me.
Absolutely. I think very, very valid points, Gautam. And to the point that Professor Atul and Professor Ujwala were mentioning, that industry really doesn't come forward and help academic institutes. This is a classic case in point where industry is actually paying the student a stipend to learn on the job, which is
I want
really.
to stop over here, and I'm very tempted to come in, if you allow me. I'm very sorry for this. And as Gautam was speaking, I was just thinking about a couple of my experiences. I think the root cause is also a complete difference in the language between what academicians and faculty have versus what people in the industry have. There's a complete, the opposite sides of the same pole. And unless you're able to bridge that, you will not see students coming out who are industry ready, because they look up to their teachers, and the teachers are not able to speak that language. So apart from an apprenticeship, I'm going to strongly encourage you to also start thinking about faculty exchange. Let's have faculty go out and spend time in Ferns and Petals, and vice versa. Now this is challenge, regulatory challenge over here, and I'm going to give a classical example. Amit Khanna is a dear friend of mine. He spent 10 years with McKinsey. He was part of the leadership team of Genpact, and now he's got into education and now part of Shoolini. He's got 25 years of the richest of experience. He's an IIM Calcutta graduate. He went to IIT Delhi, but I cannot designate him professor, because UGC says that unless you've got 10 years of teaching experience, you cannot become professor. So I think there are some regulatory challenges also that we need to think about, and we need to bridge that. And people like you need to start engaging with the regulators too.
So Professor Atul, I think you bring in another very, very valid point. And I think the regulators are looking at this shift very clearly up to a point of what are the profile of people who can come and teach at universities. So a combination, I mean, the whole, the new education policy that Professor Ujwala brought out, I think the CBCS, the 40% MOOC, the minimum 30% apprenticeship, maybe a combination of all of this will actually start making a change over a period of time. It is about executing it. It is about putting it together. And it is also about early adopters. I mean, y'all are leaders in the education industry. Y'all are thought leaders as well. I mean, SNDT, I'm an ex-student, Professor Ujwala. Okay, I did my master's in SNDT. So obviously, it's my alma mater. And and it's been around for decades. So I mean, if thought leaders can take the first step, and like I said, industry, I think we have about 700 employers like Gautam who are paying students to learn on the job while they are also earning a degree over 3 years period. So that I think is industry's probably biggest contribution to education, where the OJT is basically sponsored by industry. And if by earning that stipend, the student can pay for their own, degree course fee, and in many cases, employers are paying for the degree as well. So if that contribution can be put across the table, of course, we keep talking about board of studies, board of academics, and all of that, where we want industry contribution more and more. And I think it should obviously increase from both ends. But I think the degree apprenticeship, like I started saying, that it's an intersection between education and employment. I mean, it's something like creating more employable workforce, setting expectations right. I mean, Gautam said that we could actually we could actually skill people and make them employment ready, so that they know how do they start off when they're actually getting an employment, rather than starting from ground zero. I think level 2, level 3, easily these people, and Gautam, correct me if I'm wrong, you've experienced it, but I see that people actually scale up to a certain level. A lot of people actually stay till 24 months, 30 months. I mean, we recently did a report on ROI on apprenticeships, and we realized that the retention period for an apprentice in the industry has gone up from 18 to 20 months, and will go to 24 months in the next few years to come, which means 2 years out of the 3-year undergrad degree, the student is actually learning on the job and in classroom. And the classroom could be digital, it could be campus. And I really liked what you said, Professor Ujwala, that you bring the industry to campus or take the campus to the industry.
Yeah.
I think that seamlessness is very, very important for us, because we can't be restricted to get students only to our campuses, because then scale is a problem in our country. I mean, we have huge volume of students that are in remote locations. There are employers where there are no education institutes. So to just marry the two and bring it together, and I think in that sense, the true spirit of NEP, right? If we execute exactly what is written in, I've met Professor Kasturi Rangan, who's written the document. I mean, his thought process is so visionary. I think if you're able to execute it well, we will have what Professor Atul said, people who are more collaborative, more innovative, people who do research. I mean, India as a country has not been famous for innovation or research. Most of our institutes do research because we are supposed to do, and NAC is asking or UGC is asking it, but not because we actually want to do research and make newer innovations in our country. So I think these are multiple ways of actually creating more and more employable workforce. Apart from that, Gautam's experience of bringing in apprentice trainees as part of his team and develop them, and I'm sure he doesn't keep all of them after 24 months, 36 months, if they stay that period. But even if 30-40% kids stay, I think he's preparing workforce for his future requirements at probably a much lesser cost than what he would do otherwise, right? So I think it's a great opportunity for us as a country, as industry and institutes coming together. And anyone has any last views? I know we've already crossed 5 o'clock, so just last thoughts, all three of you, before we wind up.
We have discussed a lot about skills and merging the two things. We have actually talked about the two things, like real world and the ideal world. Ideal world lies in the universities or education sector, and the real world which we are talking about, and merging about the two. But what I think we have missed out slightly, because probably that was not the topic, but the purpose of education. We need to actually focus. Every time we talked about attitude, when we talk about attitude, the larger objective, larger goal of the institution would probably be by focusing the students towards the making this real world, ideal world, being real. So how do we make it that? how do we make the common goals achieved for the nation, for the country, for the humanity, for whatever is the focus decided by the institution itself. And that is what probably the goal and the purpose of education, apart from making an individual a full and things which have been already mentioned, but making this working for the patriotism or for the humanity, and having that compassion in the mind for the other person. That's what probably could be the goal which can be taken up.
Very, very true. Yeah. And thank you, Professor Ujwala. Thank you. Professor Atul?
Yeah, completely agree with Professor Ujwala. We live in a world of disruption. We live in a world of uncertainty. And I think a great education to students would be the ability to cope up with this uncertainty, capture the opportunities that are created by disruption, so innovation. And last but not the least, it's about values and becoming happy and I would say values-driven individuals, which many times we don't focus on. I'm going to end my statement by saying most of the time, people in the industry, and I was a culprit of that, give too much focus on skills. The role of a higher education institution is to build great individuals with great leadership skills, great communication skills, and great human beings. And if they're able to do that, they will learn the skills along the way. So let's focus on that. And that's what Oxford does. That's what Nalanda used to do. So let's create the Nalandas and Oxfords and not plumbing institutions. Over to you, Neeti.
Yeah, I think couldn't agree with you more, Professor Atul. Academic institutes are expected to bring in the best out of each individual that's studying with you, and like you said, give them certain, I think, behavioral skills, if I may use the term skills very loosely here. And yeah, I really don't think industry is expecting academic institutes to teach them to be great, React JS developers. Gautam, picking up on the example that you picked, or an AWS developer or a plumber or a retail sales executive. I don't think industry is expecting that, but industry is expecting exactly what you mentioned, Professor Atul. Gautam, industry has the last word right now. So,
no, I think absolutely right said by both of the professors and Dr. Ujwala saying that. But I also felt that yes, the learning approach by all students have also changed. Okay, earlier I was supposed to mug up all my curriculum because if I miss it, I would not able to go back and learn back to all those sessions or the learning lectures which I used to do. Therefore, the focus on acquiring those skills and acquiring on those skills on each stage was very critical. Okay, and with technology, and I'm a strong advocate of technology because that has definitely eased and taken away a lot of pressure of being following a certain regime, okay, which we have been asked to go, and which was unnecessarily a threat to lot many people, right? It has allowed you to be at your own pace and acquire the skill based on your own competencies, right? Or based on your own skill set which you have. However, I think today industries are fairly, I would say, broad-minded in terms of experimenting with the talent. Okay, if there are some commitment which we see from the education institutes or the students who shows a keenness to learn or deliver and acquire certain skill, I think every industry today, or probably industry leaders, I would say, on their behalf, they are ready to take and responsibility to make people learn and probably make them successful. Okay, we all as an Indian industries are seeing a paradigm shift in terms of the growth, right? None of people who are trying to run their business in the right fashion, I'm not seeing any dampened story there. I think everyone has been successful in their own respective industry, whoever is working in the right way, with the right ethics, values, and in the right business, right? Everyone is growing. It is not about they all need people, they all need talent. The only thing is right? So I don't think so anyone would be unhappy if someone gets a good set of people who will hold the hand, who will take them to the next levels, who will become partner in that their journey. I think we all need of good people. We all need of a good talent. Okay. It's all about that we all understand each other's world and probably work towards it. I think that's it for me, I think.
Very well summarized, Gautam. And
Thank you.
I hope next time we meet, we will agree that the gap between industry and academia is slowly started to get bridged, and it's reducing, because that's really what we want to do. We want to obviously have more and more employable students coming out of education institutes like yours. We want industry to be able to take these students and probably get them into speed much earlier than what we do right now. But I think that's really the intent. And for the students as stakeholders, I mean, the better jobs they get, the better salaries they get paid, the more experience they have, it's only going to be a win-win for all of us. So more power to all three of you. Thank you so much for coming in today. I think this conversation can be endless, but I think we'll call it a day right now. Thank you very much, all of you. Reena, over to you.
So yes, this was such an informative discussion. I thoroughly enjoyed. I will end this session, and thank you so much everyone for being a part of this discussion. It was really good. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
I will keep sharing snippets of videos, whatever we create. And yeah, I'll stay in touch with all of you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you.
Yes.
Pleasure.